This week, Aboriginals rejoiced over a landmark bill recognising the Noongar people.
The fallout of the PNG refugee riding crisis continues.
Make-A-Wish Foundation challenged Aussies to switch off their mobile phones.
And Qantas axed 5,000 jobs after the company received record losses.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. First this week, there were tears of joy outside Parliament House as the members of the Noongar community thanked Premier Colin Barnett for tabling the final draft of the historic Noongar Recognition Bill. Shibs Way has the details.
The Noongar Recognition Bill will finally recognise Noongar people as the traditional owners of WA Southwest and acknowledge their unique heritage, cultural identity and economic contributions to the state. The historic bill will also offer a native title settlement for Noongar communities across Perth and the southwest, including these other benefits.
This bill today, the Noongar Recognition Bill, is largely symbolic, but the symbolism is important. It is important in terms of the respect, the self-respect for Aboriginal people and the respect and acknowledgement of a wider community. And I think with the traditional owners here today, that was very evident.
Members of the Noongar Aboriginal community attended the Parliament sitting burst into tears of joy after the Premier tabled the final draft of the bill.
It's about finally acknowledging the original people, us Noongar people, as people of this country, of this nation.
However, National Indigenous Times journalist Jerry Jajatos has portrayed a different view.
I'm aware of a huge dissent, elders far and wide, whether I've written about them in the National Indigenous Times or on the National Indigenous Radio Service. I've gone to the consultation meetings and they've been lowly attended. I'd say 70 to 80% of Noongars are apathetic. They've given up on this bill. They're not interested in it. They think it shortchanges and does not address the myriad social issues.
The Premier says the legislation will be tabled at Parliament if the Noongar community accepts the bill. Shibs Way, WA Man News.
The backlash from the Papua New Guinea riding crisis is far from over, with some G4S guards in the detention centre turned into whistleblowers. There are reports suggesting that G4S allegedly teamed up with local residents and physically abused the asylum seekers in the camp. Meanwhile, refugee rights activists in Perth expressed their outrage over the incident.
Well, I think Scott Morrison should resign because I believe he is culpable in the deaths and injuries that occurred on Manus. Let's remember for a moment that although Labor did indeed set that camp up, as of October of 2013, Scott Morrison and his department were made fully aware of the fact that Manus was not a safe place, given the unrest that occurred on the island when violence broke out between, well, local police from the special unit implicated in murders and rapes, including a murder on Manus last July, and the military. Manus is not a safe place for asylum seekers. We have to bring these people back to Australia and close the camp.
To other news, switching off your mobile phone can be challenging, but one charity foundation is encouraging you to do just that. Make-A-Wish Australia is challenging Australians to switch off their mobile phones this month in order to raise funds and make dreams of sick children come true.
Make-A-Wish Australia, together with television personality Melissa Doyle, are appealing to Australians to switch off their mobile phones this March in order to raise funds for children with life-threatening medical conditions through the new fundraising initiative Switch Off.
And independent research has proven that each wish does so much to enhance a child's well-being. 97% of all families said the experience improved their child's mental and emotional health.
Research commissioned by Make-A-Wish has found that 52% of mobile phone users would be lost without their gadgets just after 24 hours. The research also revealed that 59% of Australians know someone who they wished would spend less time on their phone, with 1 in 10 people spending up to 3 hours a day on their mobiles. Scott Hine from Make-A-Wish encourages members of the public to participate and make a difference.
We're actually challenging Australians to switch off their phone for a nominated period of time, so they can choose whether it's 1 day, an hour, a week, or for the whole month of March. So it's completely up to them. how long they would like to participate in the campaign for.
Participants will raise money by asking family, friends and colleagues to sponsor them to switch off their phones for as long as they can during March. Patryk, Lazarz, WAM News.
A leaked report from the WA Health Department in December 2012 revealed the Fiona Stanley Hospital's delay was unavoidable due to commission and staff issues. The state opposition has demanded the Barnett government release the full report. Josef Barker has more.
The leaked report highlighted that the delay in reaching an agreement with the hospital organisation structure prevented recruitment of major senior personnel within the hospital. Other issues including the department's operation planning, service level and clinical commission were running behind schedule. However, in 2012, the state government repeatedly emphasised that the Fiona Stanley Hospital's construction was on time and on budget.
Very pleased to say that we're on time and on budget, so it will be finished and opened in 2014.
Mr McGowan accused the Barnett government of dishonesty before last year's state election, and the mistake cost taxpayers approximately $400 million.
How can it be that the most senior people in health, in Department of Premier and Cabinet, in Treasury, were being advised, or at least this report indicates they were, that there was massive problems with commissioning of the hospital, yet the Premier, the Treasurer and the Health Minister all claim not to have known.
But the Premier hit back saying the report was available since October.
I don't know why the Labor Party are just simply rehashing old issues. I mean, the government's conceded the original timetable for having patients in Fiona Stanley was unrealistic. We are doing all we can to accelerate the timetable. The equipment's been put in place, training of staff's in place, and hopefully we'll start to see some patients move maybe a little earlier than some are anticipating.
Josef Barker, WAMN News.
Department of Fire Emergency Services are still investigating whether the bushfire in Cockburn Central was deliberately lit. It happened in the early hours of Wednesday morning in the bushland between North Lake Road and Stockton Bend. Firefighters managed to control and put out the blaze hours later. There were no injuries or damage to property. However, the department says the fire appears to be suspicious. Anyone with information should call Crime Stoppers.
And here are some other top stories in Australia and around the world. Qantas will shed 5,000 jobs after the company recorded a $235 million worth of net loss in the first half. The struggling airline will also change flying routes and suspend Jetstar's growth in an effort to recover losses. In a press conference, Qantas CEO Alan Joyce described the figures as unacceptable and unsustainable. The Flying Kangaroo is aiming to cut costs of up to $2 billion over the next 3 years. Ukrainians have named former economic minister as the new president after Viktor Yanukovych was overthrown. However, the acting president warned the public that unpopular decisions will be made in order to guarantee a normal life for Ukrainians. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a military exercise near the borders of Ukraine. And that's all we have for you this week. You can check out our latest news on our website.
You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter. And it's time for the Sattler File. Good evening, Howard.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks, Danielle. Last week's suicide tragedy that claimed the life of television personality Charlotte Dawson shone the spotlight on social media bullying. Appropriately, it sparked calls for tough new laws to expose cyber trolls, people who target vulnerable victims. Now, if that didn't shift the legislation, if that didn't move them, I hope they'll take notice of Cherie Taylor. She's an Australian mum who is grieving for the loss of her 14-year-old son, Josh. Terrible story, this. Josh recently hanged himself in the backyard of his family's home when he couldn't cope with months of taunting by a group of callous school colleagues who only a month after his death were doing burnouts on his mother's front lawn. Can you believe this? This is as much as they cared for the result of their deadly deeds. Now, new nationwide laws that come into operation on January the 1st this year to curb workplace bullying won't tackle the lowlives who prompted the deaths of Charlotte and Josh and others like them. That's why his mum has bravely published Josh's story, urging us to support a petition to pressure governments across Australia to act against all forms of bullying, all forms. Like her, I believe this kind of insidious behaviour can no longer be tolerated. And for that reason I urge you to support her. Support her by going to my Facebook page and clicking on the link change.org. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, check out my blog site and WAMN site for the latest news. Have a good night.